Outing the league. It is Black Monday. It is a tough day across the NFL for scouts, for sure, for teams, for fans, for everybody else involved. Again, maybe you're happy about the changes being made. Maybe you're not. Maybe you understand them. Maybe you haven't given them a second thought, but you see the names come across the banners. Well, today we're going to go into a few of those. We're going to talk a few more details on a few of those and perhaps bring up the arguments of why they were fired, why different people were let go, why some were kept, and really what it all means in the scouting picture. Again, as somebody that's been part of that, was part of a team that had both a GM and coaching change. Again, there are a lot of different elements that really, for scouts, makes this the next 4, 5, 6 months really tough. And again, for teams that have new GMs, it doesn't get any easier. You got your put your head down, keep working. We will hit on all of that here today on scouting. If you have questions, make sure you drop them over at Twitter. I am at Right Step ADV. I will be keeping my eyes on those comments, thoughts, anything that you put over there. Hit me up. Let me know. I will try to get them answered today. We will hit on a few of them. And again, you got questions, comments, anything. This is on YouTube, on Twitter. It is going to be live at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you are listening to these podcasts after the fact, but make sure you drop those live comments over there. Make sure you check out my website, rsafootball.com, for my full background, everything I've done in the scouting world, football world, helping teams, players, agents, coaches, scouts, aspiring scouts, anybody that wants to be in the world of football. I am happy to answer questions for you. Make sure if you are a scout or aspiring scout, you check out thescoutingcommunity.com as well. Get signed up, get some information. Again, if you are a scout, it is a group only for scouts. Make sure you get signed up. We're going to be live streaming the Inside the League seminar from Indianapolis here in a couple months as we Neil hands out more likely the all the awards for some of these BART list award candidates, as well as that 2025 best draft award. Again, some good candidates. A couple of these teams that have openings were part of those conversations. So we'll see how that shakes out with everything. But for scouts and aspiring scouts, make sure you go check everything out at thescoutingcommunity.com. Hit me up if you have questions, want to talk more about it. Make sure you go check out our partner over at bluemaka.com as well. BLUMAKA.com is where you can check out our partners that will upgrade your shoes with those perfect insoles, whether it is that non-slip insole that every player training for the NFL draft should be putting in their shoes. Again, a pair of shoes is just a pair of shoes with a stock insole until you upgrade them with those Blue Maka insoles. Or maybe it's that carbon fiber split toe, turf toe. Maybe it's a recovery insole. Whatever it is, make sure you head over to bluemaka.com. Use code SCOUTING20. Let them know we sent you and get a little discount on that next order. Again, agents, this should be a part of every package you are sending to your guys as they're heading out to train, get ready for pro days and combines. Again, if you're just the average scout out there standing on your feet, make sure you get those nice padded comfort insoles that I wear in my shoes. Scouts everywhere should have them. Coaches should have them. Teams across the country should have them. BlueMaka.com. Make sure you go check them out today. Make sure if you're down at the Hula Bowl, as I know so many of you will be, find Neil Stratton. He stands probably about a head taller than just about everybody else. Go say hi. Let him know how much you love and appreciate Scouting the League, the podcast, as well as everything Neil is doing through Inside the League, whether that's his Friday wrap, his blog, succeedinfootball.com, or anything else he is doing any other time of the week. So Neil will be at the Hula Bowl. He will continue to jump on with us. We'll get a check-in with Neil at some point this week as he's down there and check in on everything Hula Bowl. Again, so let's get into it today. Again, the news has been fast and furious since last night. Again, a few surprises, a few not surprising, a couple that you could kind of see going either way. And again, with every one of these, it doesn't come down to I adamantly agree, I adamantly disagree. Again, you get to this point, again, there are, just like scouting, there are 1,000 things behind the scenes that we on the outside are not privy to that may have led to decisions being made by ownership, by GMs, by presidents, all that kind of stuff. We have such a small fraction of the puzzle. And again, we will never ever know the full story of everything. We can talk to our sources, we can listen and read and do all that kind of stuff. But again, there's gonna be a lot of pieces that we will never get into, the day-to-day, the future planning, which we will talk about a couple of these teams with. Again, what does that plan look like going forward? Again, it's going to be probably part of that Giants conversation, why Joe Schoen is staying, Joe Shane is staying. Again, the future plan that they present, Monty Austin-Fort down in Arizona, why John Gannon's not back. Again, the future planning is a big part of it. And again, what was presented to ownership what was presented on, hey, maybe the head coach and GM are not aligned, again, which is so important, essential perhaps. But again, let's get into it. Again, the first news came last night, again, in terms of Atlanta. And this is a situation that I'm going to speak probably a little bit more on because not too long ago I was there. I was in Atlanta until 2021. September 28th, I sit down on a call with GM Terry Fontenot, who tells me face to face, my first conversation with him since the whole COVID vaccine mandate came down from the Falcons. He said, Rodrik, I'm not firing you. You're choosing to get fired. At that moment, the leadership that Terry Fontenot was showing the Atlanta Falcons, the entire franchise, I was questioning it. From then on, the leadership that I had thought I had seen, that I thought had showed up a little bit with Terry, was out the window. So at that point, every decision in the future that the Falcons made with Terry as the GM, again, came under a different lens, came through a different lens for me, knowing that that was the case. Now, Raheem Morris is also getting fired as part of this, which becomes the GM and the head coach that haven't worked together. Again, we will talk a little bit about that with some of these teams are going to be making hires. The relationship that a GM and head coach have together has to be lockstep. It is so hard for you to get lockstep, to know, anticipate what the other's thinking, because there are going to be times in season, out of season, where that needs to happen. Yes, you can plan, you can put it on paper, you can do all these things to make sure you're close, make sure you're headed in the right direction. But at the end of the day, if you are not doing some of these things that get you on the same page, that you know you're on the same page, it's always going to be an uphill battle. Again, that is a situation Raheem and Terry were in, where you've got two good football minds. Again, for my personal differences with Terry Fontenot, he had built a good roster in Atlanta. It's easy to look at that. Again, a candidate for best draft from inside the league. They had done well. They had hit on some of these picks. They had been aggressive. Again, I still don't hate the Mike Penix pick. Again, the jury's still out on that one, but the Mike Penix with Kirk Cousins deal, the inability to get anything out of Kirk Cousins from a trade standpoint, putting him in a spot where, hey, we get some draft capital back. Is that the difference between Terry staying and going? Again, it certainly becomes part of the situation where you give Kirk Cousins all this money, you turn around, take the quarterback that's going to be his heir apparent. Both guys do not look good. Again, the rest of it, the rest of the roster, the way the old line shaked out. Again, you finally got a pass rush in Atlanta, which Atlanta fans have to be happy about that. Again, you got a bunch of pieces that say, hey, man, Terry could stay. But at the same time, Terry really probably has more or less hired two coaches. Again, when Terry came in with Arthur, that one did not pan out well. Again, the way my understanding, being in the building at the time, was, again, it was a kind of a joint process. Was Terry before Arthur, Arthur before Terry. It was kind of a lockstep. Those guys were together. Terry did get to hire the second head coaching candidate, allegedly. Again, because of things that happened there were people in place, again, up above the GM, that certainly have a role in that, no longer part of that football operations department. Again, you start to question, all right, well, if Terry didn't hire Raheem, again, why is he the GM? The GM should be hiring that person, not just drafting. You're not just a personnel guy. You've got to have your hands, your fingers, and again, your fingerprints all over every part of the organization. You are the ultimate leader. Again, it is hard to evaluate GMs in a lot of ways. The GM should have a longer runway, in my opinion, than coaches, because coaches, again, it's a lot easier, a lot of quicker evaluations to see some of the stuff. Again, that's going to show up with some of these coaches who got let go as well. But again, with the Falcons, they're now talking about bringing Matt Ryan in to kind of oversee the whole thing, which, again, Matt Ryan, again, some phenomenal years in Atlanta, a really good person, a guy that understands that organization, but also someone that has not been in it day to day, someone that there's going to be a lot new for Matt Ryan, as competent as he is in football. Again, business, organization, what the NFL is. Again, he's got a lot of it. He's been in it a long time. Again, through, I'm sure, the broadcasting he's done this year, what he's done with CBS, he's done a lot to get to know a bigger picture, but being in the day to day, being in that role is going to be different. He's going to have a learning curve. There's going to be a lot to that. I think he's a good person for it. Whether he's going to be ready to make all this happen from day one, this process this year, A lot remains to be seen. Again, they've got a good core. They've got some outstanding scouts on that staff. Again, I will reiterate that till the cows come home. Again, Kyle Smith, I think incredibly highly of him as a personnel guy. Again, anything that didn't happen and disappointments through my process, that side personnel wise, he's great. Tumbo, Mike Ross, again, they've got some outstanding scouts across the country, the area scouts, regional, national. Again, Rustin Webster's still there. Again, some really, really good people, really good evaluators in that building that should stay. Or again, you could make an argument should be getting upgrades and better positions elsewhere because again, what they did in this last draft and what their track record says. Again, if Tumbo and Rossi are not getting interviews for director spots, full directors, upgrades, again, it's a travesty to the industry. Both really good guys, again, should be getting their props. But again, the Atlanta thing, again, there's going to be a really interesting. Two different search firms, doing two different searches for two different positions. Again, you've got to be in lockstep. You can't make two really good hires and just stick them together and expect it to work out. That's not the way the NFL works. That's not the way your front office head coach should work. It's going to be interesting to see the way it all shakes out. It's kind of a coin flip. You stick two people together and have them work out. It's got to be all working together. Hire a GM quickly. Hopefully you've got some candidates, make that an expedited process and get through the playoffs. You've still got time to get some of these good head coaching candidates. Tell some people to pump some brakes on the head coaching circuit because the Atlanta Falcons roster is a decently attractive spot. It is a spot that should be a good spot for a head coach to go to, especially if you're on the offensive side of the ball. So we're going to kind of wrap it up with Atlanta. Again, specific questions on that. Again, my personal grievances, my personal story, my personal history with the Falcons makes this one, hit in a different way. Love Raheem. Raheem's an outstanding guy, outstanding person. Brick, a bunch of those coaches on that staff who, again, did some good things, had that roster, again, bounced back after a really rough start to the year, really rough middle of the year. And again, going to be going looking. A bunch of these guys should have jobs right away. As we get through it, Arizona, John Gannon gone. Monty Ossenford is going to have the chance to make the hire, get a singular direction. This is where, again, I imagine through the process in the second half of the year, as Arizona really struggled, it becomes that every week interview type of situation for John Gannon and what they're talking about. Is the Cardinals get eliminated, conversations in that front office, in meetings with the head coach and GM shift from, hey, what are we doing just this week to what does the plan look like beyond this? Hey, what are we going to see this week that may lead us into the future? And that's where I'd imagine Monty gave John the longest runway he could to see how everything shook out, to see progress, to see a plan, to see all these different things. And ultimately, Monty ownership did not see the things they wanted to see with John Gannon and what they're doing. Again, the quarterback situation was a mess, handled again incorrectly, or maybe he'd do it differently. Maybe everybody would do it differently. But on the flip side is that defense did not progress. That defense did not look very good a lot of weeks. And you're a defensive head coach. Again, the plan and your specific area of expertise not looking good. Again, it becomes a fairly easy argument to make for Monty, for ownership to, hey, we're going to make a change. We've got to make a change. The direction's not where we're going, where we want to go. Got to make a change. John Gannon, again, really good mind, really good person. He's going to land on his feet. He's going to run a really good defense for somebody next year. And again, everything is going to work out for him. As we keep going, the Raiders, Pete Carroll gone. Again, that was always viewed as probably a short-term deal. The big surprise for me when the new ownership, or not new ownership, the new front office, again, you've got Just Spytek, you've got Tom Brady a part of it, you've got Mark Davis, who's really taken a step back in a lot of ways. When you put Pete Carroll in place, you kind of know there's an expiration date on it. Nobody thought it'd be this quick, but you really have to try to find that heir apparent. And again, maybe they were doing some behind the scenes work all year. Maybe there were things that were happening behind the scenes that even Pete didn't know about. Pete's a good football guy. He was charged really with turning that culture and locker room around, and it didn't really happen. Again, whether that was on leadership on the players, leadership from other assistant coaches, or Pete himself, as maybe age has caught up to him. You can't ignore that kind of thing in the high intensity and pace that the NFL world is. Again, I have not heard anything about Pete slowing down, but again, you don't hear everything that happens in the building. The Raiders have the number 1 overall pick. Fully expect it to be Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana, which means you've got a really nice offensive core on that roster. And all of a sudden, you probably become the best spot for any offensive coordinator to become a head coach. Again, is there somebody in Tampa that John Spytek worked with? Is there somebody, through New England roots that Tom Brady had worked with at some point? Or is it just, hey, let's go find the best candidate who gives us a chance to win, who's going to run a really fun offense for us? Again, it becomes Pete may be the easiest argument, like, hey, we've just got to have a change. Geno didn't work out. We know we're going with the quarterback at number 1. We're going to make changes. Let's go get an offensive-minded head coach to get this thing right, as I expect that's what it's going to be. I think Tom Brady is going to, carry a big hammer into those meetings and get somebody locked up. I think the Raiders are going to be an attractive destination with everything else going on in the really tough AFC West. But again, the Raiders are going to be a good spot there. The next one, again, a candidate who may be in this mix. The Browns fire Kevin Stefanski, a 2-time coach of the year. Yes, everybody's beating that drum. They're keeping Andrew Berry. Again, this is one of those ones where, again, you can imagine there was a battle. And I would argue good ownership brings him in separately and says, hey, lay out the plan for me. Andrew, this is what the roster is. This is what it needs to look like. How are we going to get there? This is where we want to be. What's your plan? And then on the flip side, again, you bring Kevin in. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your coordinators? What are you going to do with your coaches? What does this roster look like? And again, Andrew Berry knocked the draft out in terms of the players he got last year. Again, a really, really good candidate for Neil's Inside the League Best Draft Award. But I keep knocking that front office for drafting 2 quarterbacks in the situation that put the entire team in. Drafting Dylan Gabriel, drafting Shadir Sanders, and not having a clear, concise plan from day one really, again, it created incredible stress on Kevin Stefanski. That became as much management of that quarterback room as it was the entire offense or the entire team, which takes away from everything else Kevin was doing with his roster. Again, Andrew, you knocked out a bunch of it. Again, Andrew, I'm guessing, laid out a really nice plan. I expect something to happen with this quarterback room prior to fall camp, prior to training camp, maybe even prior to the draft would be my expectation as the new head coach comes in. I don't think you can keep Dylan and Shadir this year. Again, probably part of the conversation. Maybe Kevin wanted to keep both of them. Maybe he saw differently than Andrew, maybe different than ownership. But again, you've got a head coaching candidate with an offensive background who's shown success, even if it didn't show up this year. Again, you start talking about on the defensive side for John Gannon, that offense for the Browns was tough to watch. Again, for a lot of different reasons. But even in Green Bay, Matt LaFleur, with all the injuries he had, they still put up some numbers, at least at times. The Browns really almost never put anything up. Again, it becomes all part of the argument of why Kevin's gone. Andrew is going to, have a chance to make a head coaching hire. There better be some significant improvement, or I think they make the switch on that side of the building next year. And it becomes, what's going to allow the Browns to have some continuity and be patient as some of these other teams do. As we get into some of these other ones, again, we know the Giants have announced they're keeping Joe Schoen. Again, you talked about a good draft. You've got some good core pieces. And again, the plan laid out to the Maras. Again, that is what it comes back to for a couple of these. Again, I'd imagine Joe Schoen, there was so much negative media PR coming off of the Saquon deal, the Hard Knocks, all that kind of stuff. Again, really a quiet season from that standpoint, smartly. From that front office, from everything else they did, allowed some of that to go away. But again, Joe Schoen sat down. This is the plan. This is what we want to do. These are going to be some of the names that we want to look at. Again, the Maras, the ownership group, a patient ownership group that has been through it multiple times. They know what they need. They know what it takes to win in the NFL. Joe Schoen gets the nod. Now he's got to go nail the head coaching hire because, again, Joe Schoen is not going to have long if this head coach doesn't look much improved in 2026. Again, we're talking about the same situation. Time to go find a new GM on that side. Bengals keeping both Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor head coach GM. It's the right move. This is a roster that, again, you talk about a significant injury to your franchise quarterback. You talk about we have invested in some pieces on the offensive line. We're going to hit in the draft, again, in a front office that, as we talk about all the time, operates very differently than everybody else in the league. There is nobody that mirrors what the Bengals do. There is nobody that does it in the same way. The Bengals have their way. Duke knows that way. If you're talking about changing Duke Tobin out of that front office, you are probably resetting everything. And at that point, okay, you probably are trading, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, every franchise piece, because it is going to be multiple years to get that thing right if you are making a change in that front office, because you are going to probably, ownership will give in to the demands of whatever GM they hire, because it is going to be significant investment to get everybody in that front office up to where they need to be, adding new pieces, bringing additional parts in. Again, it's a major overall. Part of the patience from the Brown family, probably, again, warranted. Again, you can make the argument for, you can make the argument against. Again, this is a team that underachieved this year. Both are all going to be prove it guys, but you've got two guys that have been together now, that have the same plan, that have the same focus. That is what you want. Again, I fully expect the Bengals to bounce back in a big way this next year, going in the right direction, going in the same direction. That is the number one thing that these two have coming back. When you talk about some of these teams with the biggest questions, Zach, Duke are headed the same direction. They're in lockstep. They know what they're going to do to get it done. The Dolphins, they need a GM. It's really been a quiet process for them. Again, have not popped up a whole lot. Now, all of a sudden, we're hearing, hey, Troy Aikman's advising. Again, a bunch of former players advising. Again, usually that means they have somebody in mind. They just want somebody to rubber stamp it. They want somebody to put their name behind it. They want to get somebody in the PR world involved in the right way with it. Again, all those things. Again, Mike McDaniel looks like he's going to be back. They played some decent football at the end. That's a head coach who is a hot candidate, who would absolutely have an OC job in a year. Again, the Dolphins will have to figure out, they're going to have to find somebody that can match Mike McDaniel's energy, maybe get some of that energy back to Mike, reinvigorate that roster and get them moving forward. The Dolphins, again, I'd imagine they will move fairly quickly now. They may be that first team to announce that GMs. I'd imagine they've got it narrowed down. They've got some guys in mind, so we'll see what happens there. And then from there, the trickle down will happen. Of course, the Titans restructure that front office as was needed. Again, a different way, the way that worked out last year with Brinker, Borgonzi, again, as it needs to be reset. You've got Borgonzi taking over that true GM role, control the roster. He's going to run this thing. You've got a really smart guy, Cap, behind the scenes organizational guy from Green Bay, and Chad Brinker, who really knows the right way to do things. Again, I expect them to, again, be a quick team with that head coaching hire. Whoever they want, they're going to target and attack them first. Again, this may be their first head coaching candidate place, as I'd imagine they're going to be ready to go. But again, you look to two spots. You look up to Green Bay, you look to Kansas City, probably grab a candidate from them. Again, Kansas City's, they're out of the playoffs. You can get with any of them real quickly. Green Bay, you're going to have to wait at least a week or so to get any candidates on campus to, interview them. If that's Jeff Hafley, if it's somebody else up there. But again, you're going to move quickly in Tennessee. I would fully expect that to happen. And then the last one, again, what a wild last game of the NFL season between the Ravens and Steelers. Again, it looks like it's going to be the Steelers walking away. The Ravens, nope, they've got it in the bag. A missed field goal, the way those balls are flying off the outside of the uprights. Again, a wild one. Aaron Rodgers can still throw a really pretty football for some of his shortcomings he now has in his game. But again, Pittsburgh gets into the playoffs, and if you get into the big dance, you got a chance. Everybody's in the playoffs now who, they all believe they can get to the Super Bowl. And I believe, again, the Steelers, with a veteran quarterback, with the head coach they have, they're in a good spot. On the flip side, again, you've got the Ravens. You've got a lot of, we'll say, stagnation with Coach Harbaugh. And again, Coach Harbaugh has been really good for a long time in Baltimore. John, it's going to be interesting, the conversations they have. This is going to be a front office is going to do their due diligence. They're going to have their meetings. They're going to listen to the plan. I truly believe they want to keep John Harbaugh as the head coach, but the plan better be right. Again, you think back to when Lamar Jackson became Lamar Jackson. Again, John went in there and had the plan. Have to imagine it was John Harbaugh fully investing in the Lamar Jackson plan that kept him around the first time. Again, paid off with a bunch of wins, a bunch of success, no Super Bowls. But again, it's going to be that same type of plan. What are we going to do to get over the hump, to get back to where we need to? A lot of talent on that roster. They've really invested in weapons for Lamar. Is it time to flip it back to that defense, get the purple people eaters back? Again, a different purple people eaters. Get the Ray Lewis, the Ed Reed, the Terrell Suggs defense back and working. I think the purple people eaters were the Vikings, so it's a bad reference. But again, they're wearing that purple color. I can get that defense back right. On the opposite side, let Lamar do what Lamar does with whatever weapons you give him. There's still some good pieces in place there. So again, I'd imagine Baltimore will be slow to move. I hope they keep John Harbaugh. The argument could be made for John Harbaugh being out. Again, that's all part of it. Any roster, any team, take yourself out of the fan, out of the angry about being out of the playoffs. Take it all out of there. Start looking at the roster. Start looking at the decisions that have been made really the last 2 to 3 years. Start thinking about the symmetry. Start thinking about the things that have been said in press. Take yourself out of the media, take yourself out of the fandom, and start thinking like you're part of that team. Could I make the argument to keep John Harbaugh? Absolutely could. Could you make the argument for John Harbaugh being out? That argument could be made as well. That's why these decisions become tough, why ownership needs to be involved, why really good leadership needs to be involved. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Every head coach, every GM, every DFO, owner, whoever is calling the shots, presidents, and anybody in between, leadership is important. You've got 53 players who need a singular direction on game day. You've got a coaching staff that needs direction. You've got scouting staffs that need direction. All of it needs leadership. And that is where, for scouts, through this process, scouts across the country, we don't have a GM now. We don't know what the roster is going to look like. We don't know what kind of offense and defense we're going to run. We don't know what grading scale we're going to use from now until, again, next fall. We're going to keep riding on what we have. We're going to make some adjustments along the way. Good scouts better use your voice. Good scouts, when asked questions, have an answer. Good scouts, when you're given a platform, again, agree, disagree, you like the way the team's going, again, be civil, do your research, do your study, do it in a good, positive way. Again, don't throw anybody under the bus. Don't just be a voice of angst like some of those out there that we know about. Again, have your hat on, your thinking hat, your put yourself in the next spot up, a director's role. Again, put yourself in that spot where, hey, this guy's really thinking about the future of this roster. This guy's really thinking about what the draft this year, next year, and 3 years from now. Is really thinking about an offense is going to look like if we go from a gap to a zone or an inside zone to an outside zone. What a 3-4 to 4. Again, thinking about all these things. Put your big thinking hat. Get outside of your little scouting bubble, which sometimes we can get into. My Midwest scouting bubble. That's my expertise. Yes, hey, it's time to take a step back through this process. Speak up when it matters. Hopefully, you got some really good notes you can point back to, like, hey, this is what I was thinking week 8, week 9, week 10. And again, I've got my receipts. Be ready to take that role. Good scouts are going to do that. Good scouts, you'll get promoted because of that. Good scouts, you might find new homes because of that. So again, everybody, scouts, be ready. It's going to be a tough time. Keep your head down, grind, do your work. Scouts are going to scout and keep scouting, get your team ready for the draft, regardless of who the head coach, who the GM is. Hopefully, good scouts are kept around in May, June, July, get another crack at it with their new leadership, because leadership needs good people behind them if they want to be successful. So what are your thoughts? What are your comments? Make sure you hit me up at RightStepADV. No comments so far, a couple that I answered already, kind of just in what I was talking about and everything like that. So again, with everything going on in the scouting world, make sure you're tuning in with us as we check in with Neil down at the Hula Bowl, as we continue to hit on these all-star games, as we continue to track these movement across the NFL. You know, we're not just here to watch football and evaluate guys, but we're going to keep scouting.